I promise you, it shouldn't actually take that long to heal from that trauma. And I'm so serious when I say that. And I have so many examples I'm going to share. Oh, I'm just going to share two. I have so many examples in general to prove this point to you. And I don't say this to disregard the pain you are going through, the pain you've been through, or the trauma that you experience whatsoever. And I'm not just saying this to encourage you, to give you some hope to feel good temporarily. No, I'm actually saying this so you realize that you seriously don't need to spend a long time trying to process that trauma out of you. It actually shouldn't take that long. And if it has taken a really long time for you, I want you to have zero shame, because in no way is that your fault. Because thank God you were even trying, trying to have a better life. But this message is going to help you realize that maybe there's a shift needed so that you can heal at a much faster speed, because it's completely and utterly possible. But first, my name is Naomi. I am here to help you finally move past those traumas, to reframe your mind, and to remove those emotional blockages so you can reclaim your life. My messages are not for everybody, but if you felt drawn to this video, it's very likely because you are meant to hear the words in it and they will help you. So yes, regardless if you have PTSD, regardless if the trauma was a big T trauma, something that most people claim that you can't overcome because of the intensity of it, regardless of what it is something that you can overcome. Our bodies are actually designed to be insanely resilient, and we have the capabilities inside of us to process it out of it. And what does it actually mean when we overcome a trauma? Does it mean that we forget about it? No, it's always there. If we want to look back on it, it still can be there. But what happens when we look back after we've overcome it is we no longer actually have the triggers, and we no longer feel the pain. We no longer feel the emotions that we feel right now when we think back, the panic or whatever it is. So I'm going to first share a story about myself. So our bodies will always try to tell us when it is time to overcome a trauma. And what that looks like is the triggers, the things that show up for you as you remember the pain, the trauma, they intensify. So for me, it had been about 4 years after one of the biggest things that traumatized me as a teenager. And about 4 years later, I try to suppress it within those 4 years, and I still would get triggered here and there when I would, see pictures of the person or think that I would be near that person. But what happened was there was one night where I was watching a TV show, and something in that show that in my mind I still can't grasp as something that related to the incident that had happened to me, but for some reason subconsciously it did trigger me. So I was watching a show, I suddenly felt anxious. I didn't know why. I went upstairs, and then suddenly I was flooded with the memories of the time that I was physically violated. Okay. And that was my body telling me it's time. Okay, it's time to move past this. This isn't something you need to and should suppress your entire life. We should never be suppressing those traumas our entire life, because then we live our life with them still inside of us and still getting triggered and still honestly lowering the quality of our life because it's still running in the background. Okay, so my body was saying it's time to heal this, and how it showed up is through having a panic attack. After watching that little clip in the TV show, went upstairs and I had a panic attack, and that was the moment for me where I was like, okay, got the message, it's time to heal from this trauma. And so what happened is I did what everyone does, and I decided to find a therapist. And when I do anything in life, I want to make sure I'm doing the absolute best thing I can do, or I make sure I find the best therapist or do the best resource or whatever. And so I did like countless hours of research to find the best therapist, and she was and is amazing, but she was not the therapist for me. And so she wasn't the therapist for me. So then I tried to find somebody else. I don't know how many I went to in the end, to be very honest with you. I think it was three. Um, but yeah, I did the therapy. I did some EDMR, which works for some people, didn't work for me. And I did the talk therapy, and still nothing was changing. And this was after months. She gave me multiple resources, multiple tools, multiple things to do so I could heal from this one specific trauma. And I was so fed up. I was like, there's just no way. I did everything I was supposed to do. I did all the research, I found the therapist, and I did what everyone tells me to do to overcome the trauma. Sometimes that works for people. Why isn't it working for me? I was labeled with all these mental illnesses and all these problems, and honestly just amplifying the pain because I was realizing, okay, I'm broken. And every time I go to a session, I feel more and more broken. And if you're feeling that way, that is absolutely not how you're supposed to feel. That's never how I want you to feel, because you are not broken. There's actually so many ways to overcome what you are going through, and your body already knows the way, and it will show it to you when you're ready. And so I wasn't ready then, but finally I was like, okay, I'm done talking about it. I want it processed. And I had this night where I realized, okay, I want the emotion, I want the trauma out of me. I'm ready to feel it. I'm ready to actually overcome it. And then suddenly this book fell into my lap, and it was a book on EFT. And I love EFT, but I don't say it's for absolutely everybody. Your body already knows, like I said, the tool that will work for you, but it was the one that worked for me. Okay, so I did EFT, which is a healing modality that we use to bring up the emotion in the body, up the trauma and out. And so I did it. I did it on myself, and I had one session where I processed that specific incident that happened to me, that many people will say should take years to process. One 20-minute session, and I don't say that to boast whatsoever. And ever since that day, if I think back or see the person or see pictures or anything like that, I feel nothing. There's nothing there. It left my body. And this has happened to me on multiple instances, okay? Before I tell you about the next example, I want to reiterate that if you are drawn to my videos, if you are drawn to this video specifically, then it's because this video is for you. So that means that it is your time to now process that trauma that you've been holding on to for far too long. And maybe you've tried, and maybe you haven't even tried yet. And if you haven't yet, wonderful, because you now have this information that healing doesn't have to take as long as you think. But if you have tried already multiple times to heal and to process it out of your body, again, no shame in that. We've been there. Most of us have been there until we have that shift. Now, what was the shift for me that changed me from going to all those therapy sessions for months and trying a lot of things and for it to not work for me, and then it finally did and somehow came out of my body in 20 minutes? The shift was actually a decision in my body that I was ready to be done with it. And if you haven't seen my very first video already, you need to watch that at the end of this video. Please continue this video because I have an example that I think is really going to help you next. And in that video, like I was saying, the first one I've made, I actually give you two things in that shows you what may be holding you back from having that desire and that feeling of actually being done with it and ready to process it. And so maybe you're doing the wrong thing or you have the wrong perspective. And I'm going to talk about that in that video. So the next example I'm going to give you is of another example of someone who actually asked for my help with a trauma, okay? And I'm going to tell you how long it took for her to process that trauma out of her body. And her trauma was actually more intense than mine. And so this is to give you hope, no matter how big the trauma is, or even if you have PTSD, which she was labeled to have, it is still possible for you. Okay, so before I say that, I want to tell you that this woman healed the trauma in, I think we worked through it in about 40 minutes, 45 minutes. My one was about 20 minutes. Don't compare the time for you though. Okay, like I said before, it shouldn't take a really long time. It shouldn't take session after session after session. It shouldn't take months. I don't even think it should take weeks. If you consistently do it after some days, if it doesn't happen the first time, you don't feel the shift, you don't feel like it's processed out of you, then it doesn't mean it's not going to happen for you. It doesn't mean you're actually on the wrong track, but it shouldn't take weeks. So maybe try 1, 2, 3 times. You don't feel that shift then. Okay, maybe we try something else, and maybe we're not actually getting the emotion up and out of the body. But don't think that it has to take only 45, 20 minutes. It could take maybe 2 hours for you. It could take maybe 3 tries, 4 tries, okay? Just not weeks and not months. I don't think that that's necessary. And if that's the case, again, you're probably not doing the actual thing that's going to get the emotion up and out of the body, or the trauma up and out of the body, or you don't have this mindset where you're actually ready to be done with it, where you're ready to let go of it, where you're ready to say, I'm no longer a victim to that thing anymore. Okay, so someone in my life noticed that things were happening for me and that I was healing and that my life was getting better, and she asked for my help. And she had been holding on to something for over 70 years. Okay, and this was a very intense trauma. It was similar to mine, but it was more intense. And it also came with public humiliation and a crap ton of shame. And so, obviously, that's very, very intense. And again, she'd been holding on to it for over 70 years. And it was the thing that caused therapists to tell her she had PTSD because of the flashbacks and the effects that, PTSD comes with, she was experiencing because of these traumas. And so she asked me, and she came to me, she said, "Can you help me with this?" And so I was like, "Of course," because I had been doing this on myself. I'd been doing EFT. Anyways, long story short, we worked through that together. It took about 40-45 minutes. It was very difficult in the beginning. Obviously, you have to be willing to, face the difficult part, to move past it. And after those 40-45 minutes, I asked her, you know, "How do you feel about it?" And I named the people in the situation. And for one of the members in the situation, she felt actual compassion and love for that person, even though she had complete hatred and anger towards her before. And then the other person in the situation, I asked how she felt, and she felt neutral. And that's how it should be. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to consider what they have done to you as right or just, or that it's, you're going to ignore that had never been done to you before. That's not the case at all. You can completely acknowledge this seriously crappy situation without allowing yourself to hold on to the pain of it, because the only person it hurts if you hold on to the pain. It doesn't make anything better, it doesn't make anything just, it doesn't actually affect the other person and make them suffer more because you're suffering. It only makes you suffer more. And so that's why we have to allow ourselves to process it, to feel neutral about it. We can logically know how terrible the situation is, but I want your body to feel neutral about it, because it's not fair on your body to keep feeling crappy feelings instead of allowing yourself to move forward. So again, took 40-45 minutes. That was a really intense thing she'd been in therapy for years. And I'm not saying that to boast me and how I helped her. I'm saying that to prove the point that it doesn't have to take as long as you think, even if you have PTSD. Okay, so if you want to see that video I was talking about, the very first video, which I tell you about the two blocks that a lot of people have to actually processing the trauma, which again, if you're watching my videos, it is time for you to process and move on and no longer be a victim and have a better life, reclaim your life. So watch that video here, and I think it will seriously help you and also provide new perspectives on what could be blocking you. And yeah, I have a lot more videos to come on these topics. So subscribe if you are ready to reclaim your life. Reclaim, I said that funny. And to process and to move forward and radically develop yourself. Okay. See you guys next time.